It's my great pleasure and honor again to introduce one of our keynotes, Ben Murray-Bruce, who's here with us today. He is the CEO and started Silverbird Group, which is now a conglomerate with 3 radio stations in Nigeria, a TV network, a pageant, and a chain of movie theaters. So everything you can think of in media, essentially. He has served as executive director for the Black Music Association of America with Quincy Jones, Dick Griffey, Stevie Wonder. He's also served as the executive director for the Coalition for a Free Africa with the late president of Mozambique and Reverend Jesse Jackson. He was on the board of the National Arts Theatre Management, the Federal Film Censors Board, the board of the Nigerian Film Corporation. I could go on boards. Clearly, we're very, very pleased to have him here. Can you please join me in giving him a very warm welcome? Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me say it's a great honor to be here today as we talk about media and entertainment in Africa. I'm honored because my company is 30 years old. 30 years old in the media, entertainment, and the property space in Nigeria. I pride myself in trying to be a pioneer in many ways. When I graduated from the University of Southern California in 1980, I went back to Africa, Nigeria, the very next day. I was convinced that Africa was my future. And I had no future being here. I had to develop my country, myself, and make a living for me and my family. When I went back, I started off as a concert promoter, and it was a lot of fun. And I'm going to draw a correlation between military juntas and democratic government. Between 1980 and 1983, there was a civilian rule in Nigeria, and I had a great time, and my company grew incredibly fast. December 31st, 1983, the military struck, overthrew the government, and I stopped doing concerts, stopped doing shows. If you remember at that time, Fela Anikulapo Kuti, the most famous export from Africa, was thrown in prison because he had 1,600 pounds in his pocket as he went through the airport in Nigeria. That was the dumbest thing a country could ever do to the greatest export from Africa. At that time, I was chairman of executive director for the Black Music Association for Africa. My job was to bring in the Jacksons and raise a lot of money for Africa, just like what Michael Jackson and Stevie Wonder had done for We Are the World. When it happened, I got a call from Washington, and they said to me, why would we come to Africa if you put the most famous African in prison for 1,600 pounds? It was a question I could not answer, and one that haunts me to this day. A second event I got involved in that really bothered me was when I tried to do the Miss World pageant in Nigeria many years ago. There was a riot in Kaduna, and 200 people died. I felt very bad about that, and we lost the right to do that show. And I say to myself, if we cannot look after 18-year-old girls from 100 countries, what right do we have to talk about tourism in Africa? We have a fundamental problem. The problem goes deeper than putting Fela in prison or having the Miss World pageant, which I was organizing, and I get kicked out of Nigeria. The biggest problem we have is when I listen to the speakers talk about the population of Africa, 1 billion people, 21 democracies, as a loud count, 8 semi-democratic, the rest you know. There's a relationship. There's a relationship between growth development in media and entertainment and democracy. The least democratic you are, the less likely you have media. Media survives in a democratic environment. If you're not democratic by nature, the media cannot survive. And if the media cannot survive, entertainment cannot survive, because you need the media to promote the entertainers. But we have 2 things in Africa. We have the very rich, and we have the very poor. It's okay to be rich because you can bring investments, you can talk about trade, you can talk about all the great things about life. But to have the poor is good and bad. The greatest athletes in the world are usually very poor. The greatest musicians are usually very poor. Nobody in this room is likely to win an Emmy Award or a Grammy Award. That is a fact. The guy to win the Grammy and the Emmy is in the ghetto. He will dictate how you dance. She will dictate how you dress in the ghetto. The man you look down upon is the one that will tell you what fashion you will have tomorrow morning. And that is the irony of life. And we have both of them in Africa. But the problem we have is, how do we now take advantage of the rich with the talent and education, taking advantage of the poor who will determine a social lifestyle for years to come? That is the fundamental problem. I hear speaker after speaker talk about the population. Yes, 1 billion people. Yes, 75% under the age of 35. But 75% under the age of 35 having access to making bombs on the internet, having access to AK-47, having access to small arms from Libya and Egypt and Tunisia, having the rights to blow your brains out because you didn't pay school fees when you needed to go to school, then you have a fundamental problem. That is the problem we have in Africa. It's okay to talk about the population, but we don't have a population control mechanism. We cannot control babies making babies. We do not have enough money to have schools available for these kids. We don't have enough money for social welfare system for these kids. We don't have enough money to keep them alive. But they have enough time to make guns and bombs to take you out. And when you go back, depending on where you go, you will need a bulletproof car. You will need high wire fences in your houses. That is the truth. If you don't, you die. For sure you die. That is the fact. So I urge you today, great institute of learning. You go back to Africa and you want to make a difference. Great ideas. I agree. You're right. But when you go back, you must understand the fundamental issue. You must all get involved in politics. I got involved in politics at an early age in America, not Nigeria, because I wanted to understand the difference between American politics and African politics. The first time I heard a candidate speak was 1976. I was a student at Iowa State University. I went to 3 universities to get 1 degree. I loved moving around. I was at Iowa State, and Gerald Ford came to speak in 1976. Remember, I was in Iowa. He got up on the podium and he said, "I am happy to be in Ohio." And I said, this guy couldn't win an election. He didn't know where he was. And life went on. And I went back, got involved in politics. Jesse Jackson ran in '84, and I attended all his campaign rallies. And I tried to understand how he could motivate people. He had no money. He raised $3 million, got 3 million votes. He used to say to me, "Ben, I ran the most cost-effective campaign in the history of the United States of America, 99 cents a vote." So when I got back, I got involved in politics to see how we run. And I noticed when you run for office in Nigeria, you pay them to vote for you. I said, this don't make no sense. I have to pay you to vote. In America, they pay you to run. Now that's the disconnect. How can that work? We have a serious problem. And then we have armed robbers. And one day, in Victoria Island, an armed robber raided this particular building. And as he raided the building, the guy had a great idea. He was going to get his gun and shoot the armed robber. No problem. The armed robber had a gun. The only problem was the armed robber couldn't shoot straight, neither was this guy. So by the time the guy came out, the armed robber had gone. He took out the gun, and he moved in a circle of 180 degrees, and he shot everybody's leg. And it's true, so he broke everybody's leg. Luckily, they don't allow you to have a real gun in Nigeria. You have this what do you call it, bird guns. He broke everybody's leg. But he was trying to kill the armed robbers. And you see, look, the problem we have in Africa is the youth. The youth is your salvation because they sing, they dance, they jump, they run. They're the ones you need. American track team, it's all full of black kids. Boxing, tennis, white people. Boxing, track and field. In Nigeria, we have that talent. But the difference is, if Tyson, Muhammad Ali, and George Foreman were Africans, they'd be dead or in prison. But here, we have a way to cultivate great people from the poorest background and make them successful. Take me. When I went to the bank and I wanted to build a cinema, and forgive me, I'm rambling because I only have 15 minutes. I went to build a cinema. I went to the bank and I said, there's been no cinemas in Nigeria for 20 years. I need some money to build one. It wasn't a lot of money, a couple of $1 million. The bank manager said to me, you must be crazy. You want me to give you money when nobody watches movies. He said, prove to me with a feasibility study that people watch movies if I give you money to build a cinema in Nigeria. I said to him, prove to me they wouldn't watch movies. It took me 8 years to raise the money from petty cash to build the first cinema. When I did, I broke the African record for movies because I knew it could happen. A lot of you deal with business with gut instincts. You can't prove it will work, but common sense tells you if it works in America, works in Europe, works in Asia, surely it will work in Nigeria. Surely it will work in Africa. And so what we have today is 21 democracies in Africa, but only 4 countries with the talent. Only 4. Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, and South Africa. That's the truth. Only 4. Everybody has a comparative advantage. Some countries are great for science and technology, but for arts and sports and music, those 4 countries will provide the content for Africa until something else happens. You're not going to find great musicians in Botswana. It's a great country, but you don't have great musicians in Botswana. That's the truth. Mr. President, Zambia, you have a lot of talent. There's a lot of talent in Zambia. But the next movie star is not going to be a Zambian. It's going to be a Nigerian. That's the way it is. Now, in Nigeria, our movies and others great in terms of quality of South African movies, in terms of sound and lighting. But the acting and the raw talent and the storytelling is phenomenal. So in the theaters, I get South African movies. Great production, and nobody watched them. I said, get me another one from New Metro. Nobody watched them. I couldn't believe it. Great production from Africa, nobody watched them. A Nigerian movie that cost 2 million naira, $15,000, breaking all records. So what's the problem? That's the talent. That's the talent. A lot of our superstars, Kanu Wankwo, J.J. Okocha, all those guys, their parents sold groundnut on the side of the streets. They became successful in spite of the government. So the question is, for African leaders, what are we doing to help the poor on the streets? I have one recommendation. I urge all presidents in Africa to have a minister of common sense in every division. The minister of common sense, his job is to look at a 20-year program. You say to yourself, I want to build a road. No problem. Send that project to the minister of common sense and let him tell you what will happen 20 years from today, regardless of who is president of the country. The minister of common sense will ensure that if we need to bring in, we need a project where we don't have any skills, and we need to bring in 200 Japanese 5 years from today, we will send in 200 Nigerians to Japan and get the train and come back and do the job because we would have planned. That's the idea of having a minister of common sense. The problem is we're in a hurry. I agree, we're in a hurry. It's right. It's right to be in a hurry. But we're in a hurry, and sometimes we miss the boat. We must be in a hurry, but we also must have a plan. And the plan is to develop our people. Our people are unemployed, have no jobs, have no money. And you have no jobs, you have no money, you will carry a gun. That's the problem. Boko Haram. People blowing up people in Nigeria, taking people out. It's not funny. They take you out. They stand in front of you, you die, they die. They don't care if you went to MIT, you're going to die. For you to live, he has to live. Now you have to understand, it's not for you to decide, oh, I'm going to drive a Rolls Royce, I'm going to go to a great institution, I'm going to come up with this great program, I'm going to be rich, but this guy will not go to school. It's not going to happen. For you to live, he must live. If he doesn't live, you die. You might as well stay in Boston. That is a fact. In South Africa, not too long ago, in the black neighborhoods, they went after the Nigerians and everybody else because they had no jobs. In Nigeria, they're killing us because they have no jobs. What is the argument? Western education is a sin. Think about it for a minute. They went to school, could not get jobs, and they're saying, if I went to school and the state cannot give me a job, you have no right to live. Why should I go to school? You can't argue with those statistical facts. Yes, Africa is great. Yes, we have natural resources. Yes, we have talent. But the population explosion is detrimental to your survival. We do not have a population control policy. You must have a population control policy. You have babies all over the place. 1 man, 5 wives, 50 children. What sense does it make? You can't feed yourself and 1 wife and 1 child, can't put them in school. The state has no money, and yet you have 50 kids. The other day I read GQ magazine. And I saw Nigeria was in GQ magazine. They had a category of top 10 of something. And I was embarrassed. We qualified Nigeria in GQ magazine. It was about sex. I said, why? We didn't go to the moon. We didn't develop any product. But we are there for sex. They said we were the most prolific lovers in the world. Now you understand. Entertainment. Now, let me ask you a question. I built a radio station, TV station, cinemas. You have a 16-year-old girl, a 16-year-old guy. Where did they go on their first date? You take it for granted. You have parks, movie theaters, everything around you here. So you can tell your child, don't get involved in sex for now. Take some time. Go to school, do something. But what do we do over there? There's nothing to do. Nothing to do. So the other day when I built the theaters, I saw a general. He came there with a 5-year-old child. Came to see me, and he hugged me. And I was wondering, the general hugging me. I said, why? He said, for the first time in my life, I could take my grandson to a theater. I have grandmothers hugging me. They come to me, they thank me. They said, for the first time in my life, I have something to do. There's one lady I see in the theater every single day. Every day. When they have no light at home, they come watch a movie. But, you know, it's funny, but it's real. Africa, with what we have. Now, people think about Africa. We don't have lions in Nigeria. We don't have lions in West Africa. So there's no zoos over there. So if you want to go see a lion, you have to fly all the way to East Africa. You have to go to Zambia or Kenya. We don't have no elephants. So what do we do? So we have this stereotype. It makes no sense. Now, if the Minister of Common Sense will say, Mr. President, this is what we're going to do 20 years from today. It sounds comical, but it's a serious problem. This is what we're going to do 20 years from today. We will have a plan. We're not trying to go to the moon. Let's forget that. It's not going to happen. Okay? Let's leave that to the Americans and to the Chinese. We're going to Mars. Let's talk about basic elementary stuff like staying alive. Okay? So a lot of you in MIT on that program, you need to stay here for a little bit longer. We need guys in agriculture. I said I got 2 minutes to go. We need guys. We need to deal with the very, very basics about life. They're just the very basics life. But very important, population control is job one. We need to control our population growth. Saying we're going to be 2 billion in 20 years, we need to leave Africa if that's going to happen, because we're going to be in big trouble. 2, we need to provide schools, hospitals, clean water, and then we need to provide jobs. If you do not provide jobs, we are in more serious trouble than we think we are right now. My biggest problem right now is the small arms infiltration in West Africa, from Libya, from Tunisia, from Egypt, and from those involved in the Arab Spring. Small arms are coming into Africa. Now pay attention to what I'm saying. We are victims of the revolution that is taking place in North Africa. We are serious victims about that. And when these guys get here, they don't shoot straight. They don't care who they kill. They don't even need to understand who they kill. You or somebody in this room will be a victim unless we take care of the poor. The rich cannot survive by themselves. You will only survive if you take care of the poor. Media is synonymous with democracy. With democracy, you have free media. Without democracy, it's curtailed. Without media, you cannot have entertainment. Without entertainment, all we do is have sex. You guys, thank you very much and have a nice day.
Let's thank Mr. Bruce for such a great, exciting speech. We're going to have time for about two questions.
Yeah, can't hear you.
So you're in a kind of unique position in that you control a lot of the media, and media sets culture. And a lot of the problems that we've talked about at this conference so far creating a culture of innovation where, for example, you're poor. Do you go out and you rob people, or do you do a startup?
Start again.
Let's say, for example, a lot of the problems we spoke about in this conference have to do with culture. Let's say, and just sort of basic values. And you're in a unique position controlling media, in that media sets a lot of those values. So let's say I'm poor. I finished Obafemi Awolowo University. I have a degree. I can't get a job. Do I, at that point, go into a life of crime, or do I go into a life of entrepreneurship? They're both good options. Creating a culture of innovation is a very big part of that. I have time because I don't have a job. Do I spend that time on education, or do I spend that time on other things? You're talking about population control. That's also a cultural issue. Can you talk a little bit about solutions from a point of view of media, things that either you're doing or considering doing in order to influence the population by controlling, what you have control over?
Fine. First of all, you got to have a plan and a balance between population and development. You got to always have a plan. 2, you must tell your banks in that country to give 5% of all loans to the youth. 5% of all loans to the youth. And the bank should not come back and tell me they have no collateral. Well, the collateral is you staying alive. That's the collateral. So give 5% of all loans to the poor. So if he wants to sing and dance, he wants to play football or cricket or soccer or hockey, he can do that. If he wants to trade, he can do that. There is no access to capital. I know. I borrow money every day.
Actually, can I interrupt for a second?
Yes.
So I'm not asking for solutions from banks. I'm asking for solutions from where you are, which is the media. You're setting role models for people. You're setting kind of people watch
I've answered
films.
the question. The media must take an advocacy position on key political issues. Mm-hmm. The media must be the mirror of the government. The mirror must tell the government, you're not paying attention to the people who voted you into office. The problem is, if you pay them to vote you into office, the chances are you're not connecting with them. If they had to vote for you in their free will, then you would have a greater sense of responsibility to the people who put you into office. But you pay them in the first place. And elections every 4 years. So it's not like you vote for the class monitor in the class. Democracy is strange in Africa. Democracy is every 4 years. Between the 4 years, there's no democracy. You understand? But democracy must be continuous. And if it's not continuous, what happens is, if you vote only every 4 years, you don't understand the civic responsibility about democracy. But the mirror must tell the government, through the Minister of Common Sense, you must pay attention to the youth and give them access to education and give them access to capital to trade. The average African is an entrepreneur. The women are entrepreneurs. Your market women, they buy and they sell and they trade. They need access to capital. They don't need access to intelligence, just capital.
Yeah, hello, my name is Martin Bai. I'm a graduate of MIT and a serial entrepreneur. I'd like you, maybe in 3 sentences, to give very practical advice to the innovators and entrepreneurs in the room, focused on Africa. There's information asymmetry between investment and opportunities. One lags the other either way. So I'm an advisor for an outfit here, MIT AITI, which focuses on social capital. I'm a director and co-founder of a 2-year-old startup, MIT incubated Nairobi Capital, which is focusing on working capital. And more recently, I'm part of a team internally incubated within a firm called Dalberg, so Dalberg Research, where we are focused on addressing that information asymmetry. So Kenya has been mentioned here by every single speaker. I just flew out of Kenya 2 days ago. When you have investment, it's not chasing opportunities there. And I love everything you said, because you are very practical. You need to be on the ground. You need to make things happen. So very precise, practical information to the innovators here, who ultimately will be faced with that reality, that investment and information lag each other. So how do you just go out there and make things happen? And maybe reflecting the president's remarks and the remarks of all the other speakers and the team that was here earlier on.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. Are we creating anything, or we are copying something?
In this,
when we go to Africa,
creating.
Creating what? Are we creating, or we are copying?
Okay.
Everything that's been invented is already invented.
Correct. It's copy.
Correct. You are copying something, right?
Correct.
So if I copy something,
yes,
I want to set up my Facebook. I want to do anything in business. I want to build a cinema. It's not an original invention. It's common sense, right?
Yes.
So I go to a bank. The guy in the bank who used to fund this simple idea doesn't know anything about media and entertainment. See, that's the first problem you have. In Africa, how many banks, all combined all over Africa, understand the media space, understand the entertainment space? They don't understand it. They don't have, in Nigeria, they have nobody who understands the industry, maybe except Nexim Bank. None. No bank. Okay, so you walk in there to raise money for a great idea. The man you're talking to doesn't know what you're talking about. That's the first problem you have. Okay, that's one. Two, the regulatory authorities do not set up the bank in such a way that he can take a risk in raising money for your new idea, which is a copycat idea in the first place. Which means he, if he had any common sense, would know that this works in New York, this works in Boston, this works everywhere else in the world. So why would he deprive you of the resources to make a living? You understand? Yeah. So the fundamental issue is one with the government, where they pay no attention to 75% of the people they govern. Two, the bankers, who only recycle wealth among the traders who only import rice and cement and sugar. That's all they do, okay? And they put the rest of the money in their pocket. So you have the bankers in the dark suits and the dark glasses who will not listen to you. You have the government who will not understand who you are and what you represent, and the regulatory authority, the central bank, who will not guide the banks to make sure you make a living. So that is why I said, before you think of inventing anything, get involved in politics.
Thank you.
We have time for 2 more questions. Please try to keep them short because of time. Okay. Thank you.
My name is Folusho Ajayi, and I'm also from Nigeria, and I'm a scientist. I have a comment, and I also have a question. My comment is that I agree with some of the things you said about the fundamental problems that we have in Africa, which is also, present in a lot of developing countries. But what I don't agree with is that Africa has the largest share of, criminals or, criminal activities going on. There are a lot of criminals in this country as well. There's a lot of...
Never said we had criminals.
You talked about...
I never said we had
talked
criminals.
about people being shot. And the point I want to make is that there's a lot of crime, a lot of, gun crime, probably that is happening in New York, for example, is probably more than, like if you look at the statistics, it's probably more than what is happening in the whole of Nigeria. So my point is this. Fine, we have all these challenges. I totally agree. But as you, now getting to my question, being a member of, thank God you are into media, you're also a member of Nigerian Censor Board. Now, movie industry is a good way of promoting positive way of thinking. Now, somebody like you, my question is, what have you done by, by the way of encouraging like Nigerian movies makers to like encourage people so that they can channel all this, negative energy that you talked about, about people reproducing and just killing each other into doing something useful. You have a chance. You are in a very good place. You have all these resources to promote people to channel all this energy into positive things, innovation. And I think that is what this conference is all about. Thank you very much.
I don't want you to confuse a suicide bomber with a petty thief. I'm not referring to a petty thief. Everybody has crime all over the world. I'm talking of a guy with a bomb shakes your hand and kills you and him. That's what I'm talking about, please. There's a big difference between a petty thief and a suicide bomber.
There are suicide bombers everywhere. There are homegrown terrorists in the U.S.
Yeah,
you still don't get my argument.
You're being defensive.
I'm not defensive. I'm just telling you the truth. Here. These are facts. There are a lot of people are getting arrested every day in this country, for gun crime, for suicide bombing,
you're getting
defensive. For Boko Haram. I know you're talking about Boko Haram. That's fine. Yeah, I know. It's a security challenge in Nigeria. There's Boko Haram. We all know about that.
Right. But let me answer the second question, since we're going to disagree on this one. The second highest grossing movie in Nigeria was a Nigerian movie called EJ. Okay? So Nigerian movies, and the highest grossing movie in Nigeria was Avatar. The second highest grossing movie in Nigeria was EJ. Nigerian movies are doing as well as Hollywood movies right now. So I don't want you to think everything is negative, but I need to raise those issues so the governments understand that they must look after the poor. The poor must be looked after. The poor must be protected. The poor must go to school just like me and you went to school. The poor must have water. The poor must have light. The poor must have the facilities we have. If the poor don't have those facilities we have, then we are in danger. That is the point I'm making. And I'm not here to compare crime between one country and the other. I'm here to talk about Africa, the problems we have, and how those problems must be solved by the government we vote into office, whose responsibility is to protect life and property of the citizens of the state that they are responsible for. That is the issue I'm raising.
My comment. My comment is this. Thank God you mentioned EJ, and I'm so proud that you have a movie that is EJ. But what I would just like to let you know is that it's going to be great if somebody like you can promote more movies like that, so that people will, the impression about Africa is so one-sided. It's all about negative things. I watch CNN, I watch all these major networks, and 90% of the time, what you hear about are farming, civil war, and everything. There are a lot of good things going on in Africa as well. There is mobile communication revolution. There are a lot of things that are going on. So just be fair and balanced in your conclusion about Africa. That's my point. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, to conclude on a positive note, I'll try to ask you an easy question. My name is Frank Kosaki. I'm the director of a documentary called This is Nollywood and the co-founder of the Nollywood Workshops. And I was electrified by your speech, and I would like to ask you if, in your position, you think you can help Nollywood, because I think it's an industry that is an incredibly untapped opportunity to engage civil society and to inspire young people who now you can grow up in Nigeria and have these incredible job opportunities that never existed before. You can work in a creative industry. I think you're in a position to really help this industry flourishing, and I was wondering if you have some specific ideas, and also looking forward to the panel. So you have a great position. Thank you.
Thank you. Nollywood survived. I think I need to clarify, because the gentleman here, I think he missed what I was trying to say. Nollywood survived in spite of government. That's the point I'm making. In spite of government. Imagine what would happen to Nollywood if it had financial support from government. Imagine what will happen to sports if it had financial support from African governments. Imagine what will happen to all of Africa if we paid attention to the poor people that will determine how we sing and dance tomorrow morning. That is the point I'm making. So yes, the government must create a fund available at 0% interest to the poor at 5%. 5% of all loans all over Africa, every bank should be given to this sector of the economy. If they did that, after all, some of these people wear $1 million watches. So sell the watches and make the money available so that we can develop the industry. Thank you very much.